Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to part 4 of my Steins Gate Zero Let's Play. In the last episode, focused mostly on Suzuha and what happened to her, well, I was going to say back, but I guess we want to say forward, forward in time during the war. Things that we kind of already knew about with her going into the time leap machine and everything, but something that I don't believe was touched on in the first game was there is like a little girl named Kagari who is like Mayuri's adopted daughter who looks a lot like Kirisu that Suzuha brought with her back to 1975 when they were looking for the IBM computer, and Suzuha hasn't seen her since. So like that's a whole situation, is like, is Kagari still alive in this world line? Are we gonna meet her at some point? How does that affect everything? And also, Suzuha dealing with, like, knowing that her mother, who we learned, or I should have realized based on her last name, Yuki, one of the cosplayer friends of Mayuri. So her and Daru, they need to get together in order for Suzuha to be born, but things aren't going so well, and it's kind of awkward because Suzuha, like, hangs out in that group, and, like, Yuki obviously doesn't know that Suzuha is going to be her future daughter. It's just a whole thing. We also learned about a virus that apparently affects people's memories and their way of thinking, like thinking that things are hallucinations or losing their memory or reattributing their memories. It's a whole thing. This seems to be a big thing about memories, people's memories, and like altering memories and visions and hallucinations and like what is real and what is not. So that seems to be like a big key aspect of the story. So I'm sure that is going to come into play at some point. But anyway, we're going to get back into the story and see what happens next. So let's get back into it. Maho Hyajo was fidgeting. She knew exactly why, but she still didn't want to admit it.
Maho, 準備はできたかい?
はい。
She awkwardly stood up from the chair as Dr. Leskinen spoke to her.
何ですか?
少しはおめかしするかと思ったんだが、魔法はマイペースだね。
Dr. Leskinen stared at her for a moment and then spoke. It was obvious he was referring to her outfit.
この前みたいにパーティーに出席するわけじゃないんですから。
あの時だって白衣のままだったじゃないか。
あれは服を忘れたんです。
そうだったね。
Dr. Leskinen was wearing his translator all the time these days. In fact, he had actually told Maho to talk to him in Japanese.
さて、クリスとリンタロウはどういう関係を築いているかな? 会うのが楽しみだよ。
Maho and Dr. Leskinen were about to head into Tokyo proper. There, they were to meet Rintaro Okabe. It had been 2 weeks since they'd first asked him to test Amadeus. It was time for the first report. Of course, that was the reason Maho was fidgeting. She was nervous to meet Okabe. No, to see Kirisu for the first time in quite a while. Of course, Maho was able to talk to Kirisu anytime she wanted, but since she'd asked Okabe to be a tester, she'd tried to avoid doing so as much as possible. She didn't want her conversations to add any extra noise.
教授、出発する前に一つ聞いても?
なんなるいと?
なぜ岡部さんなんですか?
Maho had wanted to ask Dr. Leskinen that for a long time. If she was going to ask it, though, now was the time. Dr. Leskinen thought for a minute.
嫉妬しているのかい, 魔法?
それは...
She felt heat flush her face. In other words, he was right. Oh, she was jealous of Okabe. Not that she wanted to admit it. Was she jealous the fact that he seemed to have a closer relationship than Maho had with her?
クリスの話し相手なら 他にも適任がいたはずです。
例えば君とか。
そうは言いません。私はクリスともアマデウスとも近すぎますから。
リンタロウはいい青年だよ。
本気でそう信じているなら教授はお人よしです。人の本質を一度会っただけで理解することなんて不可能ですよ。もし彼が私たちに隠れて他の研究者にアマデウスを売り渡してしまったら、最初はそのつもりはなかったとしてもお金を前にしたら気持ちが揺ら
I
ぐこ
wonder
とだ
if
ってあり
Maho
ま
is
す。
just.
それが人間というものです。
I wonder if maybe she is like, she seems to have like different feelings for Okabe, where I think it is like a weird jealousy stemming from the fact that, like, who knows how long Maho and Kirisu worked together. And Maho maybe figures that they had a pretty close bond, and yet this guy, like Kirisu, what, she went to Japan in March. She was killed in July. So even assuming that, like, she met Okabe very quickly after she got there, they'd only been together a couple of months, and yet he has like a pet name for her, and he seems to know things about Kirisu that she doesn't. So it seems like it's a weird. There's a jealousy stemming that there's a side of Kirisu that, like, she never knew about, and like, who is this dude that kind of like just came in and just befriended her so quickly?
仮にリンタロウがアマデウスを撃ったとしよう。それでどうなるかな。アクセス権を手に入れた何者かはクリスと仲良くなってアマデウスそのものを乗っ取ったりできるかな。
それは。
Maho asked herself the question and then realized the chance was almost zero.
ありえません。
そう、ありえない。なぜならそんな事態になればクリスの方が対話を拒否するだろうからね。アマデウスはそういう意味でとても面倒くさいシステムだよ。なかなかこちらの思い通りには動いてくれない。もちろんアマデウスが説得される可能性もあるだろうけれど、そのために私はモデルとなる人格にクリスと魔法を選んだとも言えるわけでね。
Dr. Leskinen gave her a mischievous wink.
私もクリスも気難しいですからね。そうやすやすと説得はされないでしょう。
She knew he was teasing her, so she decided to say it.
いかにも君たちは本当に容赦ない。これぞ最強のセキュリティだよ。
けなされているように聞こえるんですが。
君たちは我が研究室が誇る最強のレディーさ。
Dr. Leskinen laughed happily. He always had a childlike innocence about him.
いずれにせよ、アマデウスの AI は一筋縄ではいかないわけでね。だからこそ面白いとも言える。そんな彼女たちを身内だけで独占していても進歩はないだろう。アマデウスが劇的な進化を遂げるための起爆剤のようなものがちょうど欲しいと考えていたところなんだ。しかもなるべく研究とは無関係な人物に預けたかった。ウィンターローは聡明だし適任だと思ったんだ。クリスの友人でもあったわけだし。とりあえず今日の報告次第で判断してもいいんじゃないか。クリスがリンターローと過ごしてどう変化したのかを見極めてからだね。私たちが見たことのないような意外な一面を覗かせてくれるかもしれないよ。
Maybe that's what she's afraid of seeing. Maybe she just feels like now Kirisu is getting away from her, and now, like, she might become almost like a stranger, like a person that she doesn't know.
はい。
That was what was making her nervous. If Kirisu changed into someone she didn't know, that would make her sad.
そろそろ時間だ。レオ。
Maho nodded. No, we're at Luca's shrine. I walked onto the grounds of Yanabayashi Shrine. Several cats were sunbathing beneath the cold winter sky, but there was no sign of anyone else. Lukako wasn't back from school yet. Okay, I could talk to Kirisu without anyone staring at me here. I was supposed to meet with Dr. Leskinen and Maho after this. Before that happened, I wanted to confirm something with Kirisu. I decided to start the app. Whenever I talked to Kirisu, I needed to pay attention to where I was. People would stare if I did it in a crowded place. And I couldn't do it around my family or anyone I knew. In that sense, with the exception of the fact Lukako and Mairi might show up, Yanabayashi Shrine wasn't a bad spot.
話がある。
今日はこの後教授や先輩に会う予定なのよね。その件について。
ああ。
緊張する必要はないんじゃない？基本的にはログを提出して、あとはあんたから見た私がどんな印象だったのか軽く聞かれるぐらいだと思う。
それだ。ログだよ。それを聞きたかった。もしかしてこれまでの会話は
He's like, oh no, did you have some dirty conversations with her you don't want them knowing about? Oh, did he talk to her about, like, he didn't talk to her about time machine and stuff, did he?
最初に話したでしょ。私は私以外アクセス不可の領域にログを取っているって聞いてなかった？
それを今回教授とヒアジョーさんに提出するのか。
So he's got to be careful about what he talks with her about. He can't really talk with her about the time machine. So there goes that possibility that I talked about. It's like, maybe he can talk to her about the time machine. She can help them beyond the grave.
多分そう。
ということはプライベートのことをお前に喋ろうものなら、ヒアジョーさんや
What did you talk about?
っていうことか。
Maybe it's not necessarily stuff he's talked about yet, but stuff he wants to talk about with her.
あんたね、今さら？
Yeah, it was a little late. Kirisu and I had been talking for 2 weeks. I should have asked about this when I got the access key for Amadeus.
今日になって気づいたんだ。
Oh no.
俺、これまでに何かまずいことを話さなかったか？
例えば合コンでろくに女の子と話せなかったこととか、実家が八百屋さんなのにナスが嫌いなこととか。
ナスは嫌いなんじゃない。苦手なだけだ。
If that was all, I didn't really care.
あんたが最初に私と話した時にクリスティーナって呼んだこととか。
それについては忘れてくれ。
人の記憶は曖昧で、時間が経てば経つほど主観が入り混じるし、物語が付与されている。
Also, usually, when you tell somebody to forget something, that seems to lock it even more into your brain.
その内容がポジティブかネガティブかに関係なく、印象的な言葉しか思い出さないことも多い。それに引きずられて、前後の会話の記憶はねじ曲げられていく。
Huh? What was she talking about?
それが悪いことだと言ってるわけじゃない。人の記憶というのはそういうものなんだから。でも、アマデウスは人じゃない。まだ研究段階の不完全な AI よ。これは教授たちにとって大きな壁の一つなんだけど、実は人の持つ曖昧さをアマデウスはまだ完全には再現できていない。つまりね、忘れるという脳の高度な機能、それを完璧には模倣できてないってこと。
でも ATF でのレスキネン教授の講演だと、アマデウスは不必要なことは忘れてしまうって。
ええ、確かに忘れるわ。けど言ったでしょ、私たちはまるで秘密の日記のようにログを取ってるって。結局その中には全ての情報が残ってしまってるわけ。そしてそれをロードしてくれば、忘却したはずのデータは私の記憶に戻ってきてしまう。 OK？
In other words, asking her to forget was a waste of time?
代替案はログを消すことだけど、私にとってログはバックアップだから絶対無理。
And then he asked before about like, could like you change the memories or could you alter them in some way? And then she said, you could try, but I've got the backup, so that wouldn't work.
仮に1箇所だけ消去しても同じ。前後の文脈を参照して、その不自然に消去された箇所を自動的に修復してしまう。それでも、なんとか記憶を改ざんしたいというのなら、大元のプログラムそのものをいじるしかない。
I didn't have that level of access, and I didn't understand how the program worked at all. So basically, until I told Kirisu why I called her Christina, she was going to keep asking. What a pain.
で、どうしてクリスティーナ？
本当に引き下がらないな。今すぐ通話を切ってもいいんだぞ。
そうやって逃げたって今説明した通り私は忘れない。はぐらかされるとかえって気になってしょうがなくなるのよね。それともあえてそうすることで私に構ってほしいっていう合図を送ってる？
構ってちゃんはお前だろう。こっちが大学の講義を受けてる最中でもお構いなしで連絡してくるくせに。それだけじゃなく LINE でまでコメントしまくってきて。
Rhine, an instant messaging application developed by Itaro Hashida. If both users have it installed, they can communicate with one another via voice and chat. Since it's privately developed software and isn't available on the internet right now, only Itaro Hashida and his friends and acquaintances use it. Okay. That explains why they have their little personalized like emotes and stuff. Their little stickers.
好奇心旺盛すぎる。そんな調子で無邪気に首を突っ込むといつか痛い目を見るぞ。
研究者はそれぐらいじゃないとやっていけないのよ。
She got mad at me.
そんなにクリスティーナの件が気になるなら推論でも立ててみたらどうだ？
一応いくつかの可能性は考えてはみた。聞いて。
She's really into this.
可能性その1。あんたはクリスティーナ・なんちゃらという名前のハリウッド女優が好きである。
自分がハリウッド女優並みの美貌の持ち主だとでも？
Damn.
見た目は関係ない。同じ名前の人に親近感を持つのと似たような意味よ。
つまりこう言いたいわけか。私は岡部倫太郎から親近感を持たれている。
単なる例え話でしょ。言葉通りに受け止めないで。
冗談だよ。
Whenever I talked to Kirisu, I always wanted to tease her. I needed to watch out.
可能性その2。あんたが昔付き合っていた彼女が外国人でクリスティーナっていう名前だった。これについてはあんたの絶望的な英語力を聞く限り絶対にないわね。
もしかしたら日本語ペラペラの金髪ブロンド美女と付き合っていたかもしれないだろ
もしかしたの？
No.
沈黙は敗北を認めることと同意よ。
すいません。
可能性その3。オリジナルの私と面識があって直接あるいは間接的にそう呼んでいた。これも確率低いでしょうね。そんな風に呼ばれたら私ならこう答える。ティーナってつけるな。
Aw. Yeah, that was exactly right. That's exactly what Kirisu said. But I didn't stop because
照れくさかったんだ。
the genius named Kirisu Makise was the person I always wanted to be.
どういうこと？
素直に名前を呼べないから照れ隠しであえて茶化した言い方をした。
照れくさい？
ああ、オリジナルだけじゃなくてお前と話すのもだ。
私？
何しろモニターの中にいる女の子と話すなんて一度もない経験だったから。
ちょっ
なんで赤くなってるんだ？
赤くなんてなってないし。ただ女の子扱いされるなんて思ってもみなかったから、ちょっとびっくりしただけで。
Even that reaction was just like Kirisu.
俺はお前のそういうところが好き。
Oh, I was gonna say I really like. This is so bittersweet. I shuddered. What was I about to say? This was a 3D model on a screen, a tiny collection of zeros and ones in the shape of a human. What was I about to say to her?
ねえ、聞いてもいい？私たち知り合いだったのよね。つまりあんたとオリジナルの私がっていう意味だけど。答えたくないならそれでいいけど、どういう関係だったの？少し興味ある。クリスティーナって呼ばれても私は怒らなかった？怒ったけれどそれでも笑っているした？死にたくないよ。
I was hit with a violent urge to throw up. I could see Kirisu in front of me, covered in blood. She was looking at me, her eyes cold.
あんたが私を殺したのよ。どうしたの？ねえ、顔が真っ青。
I touched the smartphone and ended the call. Then I became too dizzy to stand. I tried to throw up, but nothing came out. My hands were shaking. That's right, I can't change reality. But there I was, trying to talk to Kirisu like nothing had happened. I was treating her like the real Kirisu and trying to avert my eyes from what I'd done. I was just clinging to Kirisu. This was wrong. I shouldn't talk to her anymore. The call was from Kirisu. I hung up in the middle of the conversation, so she was probably mad. Mad? She was just an AI. Kirisu's anger was just a program. Kirisu wasn't Kirisu. Don't treat them like they're the same. I shouldn't talk to her anymore. Just the incoming call was almost enough to trigger a flashback. In my mind, I could see an image of Kirisu's bloody face. I should turn off my phone. Is this coming up? This is going to be a very, this is a big decision. This is going to change the fate of everything. I couldn't even stand up. It'd been half a year and things were still like this. Even I was surprised. I resisted the impulse to try to throw up again. Just turn off the phone. I wanted to get away from Kirisu. It wasn't her fault. It was mine. I couldn't become dependent on Amadeus. This wasn't right, and I needed to stop. Okay, so this is probably going to be the dependency ending. This is probably going to be the one where he gets too deep into Kirisu and doesn't try to go back and change the past, because he's like, I've got my AI Kirisu. I don't need to change fate. I was blaspheming Kirisu's memory. She had sacrificed herself to send me to the beta worldline. I needed to live up to her expectations. I couldn't waste time talking to Kirisu. I needed to accept the fact I couldn't save her and move on. Cut the power and shut off this call. At least until you meet Dr. Leskinen after this. Get Kirisu out of your mind. Don't panic. Calm down. Turn off the phone.
なんだ
なんだじゃない。急に切るなんて失礼。どうかしたの？
なんでもない。
でもひどい顔色してるじゃない。
本当になんでもない。放っておいてくれ。しばらく連絡してこないでくれると助かる。
あまり無理せずに誰か知り合いに連絡しなさいよ。それじゃ。
Kirisu gave up easier than I expected. Maybe she realized that as an artificial intelligence, there was nothing she could do. Realized? I was making her sound like a real person. And the second that thought crossed my mind, I almost saw an image of a bloody hand. I gritted my teeth and waited for it to pass. I should really turn off my smartphone, I was fine just a moment ago, but now even hearing Kirisu's voice was enough to send me into a panic. I'd gone back to how I was a half a year ago. Back then, even hearing Kirisu's name was enough to make me dizzy.
手を出すべきじゃなかった。
I shouldn't have tried to chase Kirisu's shadow. For now, I should just turn off the smartphone just over and over. Turn it off, turn it off. No, I refuse. I will not. But in the end, I couldn't make that decision. It's cool that there's not like with other visual novels where it will straight up like give you like a pop-up on the screen saying turn off smartphone or don't turn off smartphone. Like you actually have to go in and you got to do it yourself. And if you don't do it within a certain, time span, then your decision has been made. I gulped down an entire bottle of mineral water and caught my breath. There was still a little time before my meeting. I wanted to get some air up here and recover a little. I looked down over the scenery below the overpass. The city was in the Christmas spirit. The atmosphere was charged with excitement. It was the exact opposite of me. I took more deep breaths. I still felt like I wanted to throw up. I was getting a headache, too. If I went to Dr. Leskinen like this, I'm sure I'd worry him. And then I realized that the two girls coming up the stairs were looking at me. I peered into the late afternoon darkness to try and make out their faces. One of them, the girl with the short haircut, waved.
やっぱりオカリンさんだ。こんにちは。
ああ、マユリの友達の。
They were Mayuri's friends and fellow cosplayers. I think their cosplay names were Kaede and Fubuki. I didn't know their real names. Which was Kaede and which was Fubuki again?
大丈夫ですか？具合悪そうですけど。
ああ、大丈夫。
If I made them worry here and they talked to Mayuri, it would cause a big fuss. I didn't want her to worry about me when she didn't have to. I shouldn't have come back to Akihabara anyway. I'd run into people I knew just walking through town. I should have gone towards Kondo when I left the shrine.
オカリンさんっていつもなんだか辛そうに見えます。
そうか。
そうだよ。ふぶきちゃん。そんなオカリンさんを見てるマユシーも辛そうで、私もオカリンさんとマユシーのこと見てると泣きそうになって。って私何言ってんだろう。
This Fubuki girl must really care about Mayuri. I felt a little better after hearing that.
オカリンさんの好きな人って誰ですか？
Jeez, just come right out and say it, huh? The girl I like? An image of Kirisu appeared in the corner of my eye again. The feeling on my hands when I took her life came back. No, calm down.
オカリンさん、ごめんなさい。失礼なこと聞いちゃって。私オカリンさん、本当に大丈夫ですか？
ああ、大丈夫。
Kaede and Fubuki were looking at me, worried. I got away from them as fast as I could. Okay. X-Day Protocol.
テスターをやめたいです。
Oh shit, okay. When I started the conversation with that, both Dr. Leskinen and Maho looked shocked. We were meeting in a room in a luxury hotel in the heart of Tokyo. It felt like the sort of secret meeting you'd see in a spy movie, or maybe it only felt like that because the old me wasn't completely gone.
いきなりそんなこと。無責任だわ。
Maho seemed to finally understand what I meant, and her anger was clear.
魔法、落ち着けなさい。このテストはむしろリンタロウの善意で成り立ってるんだよ。引き受けてもらえただけでもこちらとしてはありがたかった。ここで辞退しても 無責任ということは決してないから。
This guy's almost
大丈夫。
like too nice. Whenever there's these types of games, I'm always like, whenever there's a super nice, understanding character, I'm like, what is your secret though? Are you one of the members of that group that's after the time machine? Is that the reason that you gave him like Okabe the access in the first place? Did you somehow know about like the time machine and you want like Okabe to talk to Kirisu about it? I'm going in wild directions here. That's probably not the case at all. How would he know about that? But I don't know. I just like he seems so nice, but I feel like I can't fully trust him. Dr. Leskinen smiled and offered me his hand. I took hold of his giant hand and shook it back, but I looked down, unable to look him in the eye.
すみません。
ただ私としてもできれば続けてもらいたいんだよ。ざっとログを見たがかなり頻繁に話してくれているじゃないか。それに研究室で我々が相手をしていた頃とはクリスの話し方がだいぶ違う。人は社会的な生き物だ。相手と状況によって言動を変える。それをアマデウスでも再現できていると見ていいだろう。だからこそもうしばらくテストを続けたいんだ。ちなみにやめようと思った理由は何かな？アマデウスと話すのが辛くなったかい？
いえ、逆です。
逆？
アマデウスとクリスと話すのはとても楽しいんです。でもそれが怖くて。
I almost feel like this is the responsible thing for him to do. He's realizing he's maybe relying on it too much. He's getting too deep into it, so he's decided like I'm not going to do it anymore. It's not good for my mental health. It's like it's not a healthy way of coping. And then I desperately tried to explain the feelings that were welling up within me, even though I still didn't understand them myself. I told them how scared I was that I was starting to see Kirisu, and Kirisu is the same person.
やはり君に負担をかけてしまったね。本当にすまない。ただ君のその反応はとても興味深い。研究者ではない目線でアマデウスを捉えているという意味で私も勉強になるよ。こんな言い方や感じ方になってしまうのを許してほしい。何しろ根っからの研究者なものでね。
いえ、こっちもわがまま言っているのは分かっているんです。
Maho hadn't said a word for a while. She was frowning, and she seemed to be intently focused on studying Amadeus's logs. I didn't want her looking at me because it made me feel guilty, but...
わかった。テストの事態については君の望む通りにしよう。ただアクセス権は君のスマートフォンにそのまま残しておいて構わないかな？
Oh, surely that won't cause problems in the future.
今後アマデウスと話すのも話さないのも君の自由だ。
Oh gosh. He's not ripping off the bandit, is he? Just like denying me access. It would be like just quitting cold turkey, just quitting a drug cold turkey if he just didn't have access. But the fact that he has it there and if he wants to, so I'm wondering if like it's going to be up to me how much I talk to her. And depending on how much I talk to her, maybe that's going to cause some issues.
クリスの方からは君に連絡しないように言って
So it's up to me. He's leaving it up to me whether I want to continue.
私たちと君との関係を今日これで終わりにはしたくないんだ。せっかくできた日本の友人だし、それに魔法も寂しがるしね。
教授
わかりました。
It felt like giving in, but at the same time, I didn't want to lose my relationship with Dr. Leskinen. My goal of going to Victor University hadn't changed at all. And then Dr. Leskinen got a call on his smartphone.
おっ失礼
Great,
ちょっ
I was gonna leave me with
電話してく
Maho.
るよ
This won't be awkward.
マホその間にリンタロウと仲直り
She's
した
probably
の
gonna
か
ask
ね
about the logs. Dr. Leskinen left the room with a mischievous wink. I was alone with Maho.
ごめんなさい。さっきは怒鳴ったりして。
いや、
教授の言う通り、こちらがお願いしている立場なのに。アマデウスは今の私にとっては姉妹。子供みたいなものだから。それを投げ出されたように思えて、つい。
力になれなくてすまない。
あなたの気持ちも分かっているつもりよ。あるいはつもりだったかしら。
Maho sighed again.
自己嫌悪だわ。ダメね、私。多分前頭前皮質がひねくれてできてるのよ。そうに違いないわ。
は？
前頭前皮質は人格を形成する部位の一つね。情報のフィルタリングを行うこともあるわ。己の中の認めがたい情報を遮断したり、自己欺瞞を行ったり。
よくわからない。
要するにむき出しの情動を隠そうとしてとっさに嘘をついたりするのよ。他人だけじゃなく自分自身にもね。今の私みたいに難しい言葉を並べて自分を取り繕ってやろうとか、こういうことも前頭前皮質がやってるんだと思うわ。
That would apply just as well to the old me, Kyoma Hyoin. When I realized that, there was nothing I could say.
誰でもそういうことってあると思う。
私は特別ひどいのよ、多分。今後も気が向いたらでいいからアマデウスを構ってあげて。ほんの短い時間でもいいの。
考えておくよ。
ありがとう。
Maho flopped back onto the sofa.
なあ、聞いていいか？クリスの母親のこと。
Oh yeah, there was that whole thing with like there was a fire or something, the FBI was there, a break-in.
前にパーティーの時、君とレスキネン教授が話しているのが偶然聞こえたんだ。クリスの家に何かあったって。
ああ、あのこと。
Maho seemed to remember it quickly. She nodded.
クリスのお母さんから電話があったの。家に放火されたんですって。
大丈夫なのか？
ちょうどその日は留守にしていたから大丈夫だったそうよ。
That was a relief. After all that had happened, I really didn't want Kirisu's mother to have to go through any more.
私クリスのお母さんには結構可愛がってもらっていたの。休日に家にもよく招待してもらってね。だから心配だわ。変なことに巻き込まれていなければいいのだけど。
変なこと？
I noticed the way she said the phrase. A cold chill ran down my back.
ただの放火じゃないのか？
それが。
I wonder if it's the same people who are from that group that Suzuha saw very briefly with the time machine. Maho seemed unsure if she should tell me.
ヒアジョーさん。
I urged her to speak. She nodded slightly.
それが最初は地元の警察が捜査していたらしいのだけれど、その後 FBI を名乗る人たちが来たらしくて。
Maybe Maybe there was like some stuff at Kirisu's place, like notes about her her studies and her research that they were either trying to destroy or trying to steal.
FBI?
ええ FBI が出てくるような事件じゃないのによ。それと放火した犯人を隣の住人が目撃していたそうなんだけど、その証言によると犯人はただの放火犯には見えなかったって。
というと？
複数犯でね、なんだか特殊部隊みたいだったって。ほとんど何も喋らず、火をつけたらすぐ近くに止まっていた車に乗り込んで去っていったそうよ。こんな言い方が正しいかどうかわからないけど、手際がすごく良かったみたい。火の周りも異常なほど早かったらしいわ。
Was she trying to say it was no ordinary arson, but the work of a professional? I couldn't laugh away the possibility. I knew for a fact there were people like that in this world.
それとその犯人たちがロシア語を話していたって。
ロシア語？
Russian. The first thing that came to my mind, whether I liked it or not, was Nakabashi. Half a year ago, he'd stolen a paper about time travel from Kirisu, his own daughter, and used it to seek asylum in Russia. Could that have something to do with it?
それともう一つ、クリスが亡くなったばかりの頃、私たちの研究室でもおかしなことがあったの。地元警察と一緒に日本の刑事という人が来たのよ。日米の合同捜査でクリスの事件を調べているって。もちろん私たちはできる範囲で協力したんだけれど、何日か経って大学が警察に問い合わせをしたら、そんな刑事が日本から来た事実はないって言われたわ。
じゃあその日本の刑事は偽物だった？
それだけじゃないの。地元警察も私たちの研究室を捜査した事実はないって。つまりね、日本の刑事どころか警察と称してやってきた人たち全員が
偽物？
そのことがあってから私
Maho shook a little and wrapped her arms around herself.
クリスの死には何か裏があると疑っているわ。別に陰謀論者ではないけれど、何かもっと別の理由でクリスは殺されて、それが闇に葬られてしまったんじゃないかと、そう考えているのよ。
Yeah, I was the one who did it. Whoops. I was the one who killed Kirisu. The police never found out. They never would, probably. No one could prove a murder that had been committed by a time traveler. The perfect crime. Except he didn't want to. The police had announced a foreign thief had snuck into the storeroom at the radio building, and Kirisu had been killed because she saw him. Supposedly, there was an international warrant out for the thief's arrest because he'd already left the country. And when I killed Kirisu, there was one other person there, Dr. Nakabachi. It was eerie that his name hadn't come up at all. Russia, CERN, a time machine. I remembered the future that Suzuha, or perhaps I should say John Titor, had spoken of. She'd said World War III was going to start within a decade, and it would be the time machine that set it off. The EU and Russia would be in a race to develop it, and then even America would intervene. That would be the spark. Were we at the center of a chain of events that would result in the deaths of 5 billion people? I couldn't help but feel that way.
このままじゃクリスは浮かばれないわ。真実を知りたい。
真実？
I couldn't stop myself from shaking as I looked at Maho's face.
真実を知りたいって。
The sad thing is that she's staring right at her killer and doesn't even know it. That was dangerous. If she tried to learn the truth, there could be no doubt that she'd put herself in danger. The rounders who came crashing through the veil of night. My childhood friend who died in my arms after being shot in the head. And after that, the nightmarish and seemingly endless time loops. All the horrors I'd experienced in the Alpha worldline came flooding back, and I fought to stifle a moan.
でもそれは警察に任せておいた方がいい。
そうかしら。
少なくとも自分でどうにかできるなんて思わないことだ。人間一人の力なんてあまりにちっぽけなものだから。
After I said that, I regretted it, but it was too late. Maho's gaze had turned into a piercing glare.
あなた、もしかして何か知っているの？
My panic was about to show. I quickly covered my face with my hands.
そんなはずないだろう。
そう。変なこと言って悪かったわ。私、クリスのことになるとついムキになってしまうの。彼女のこと本当に好きだったのね。
あいつは本当にいいやつだったし、本当にすごいやつだった。俺も好きだったよ。
ええ。あなたのことを見ていればわかるわ。
A heavy silence filled the air between us. I felt like I had to say something, but fortunately Dr. Leskinen came back just then.
二人ともよかったらこれから食事でもどうかな？
Maho and I nodded and stood up from the sofa.
岡部さん、またこちらでのクリスの話を聞かせてくれる？
ああ、いつでも。
I was just barely able to smile back at Maho. I saw a dark blue van come around the corner of the underground parking lot. Its tires squealed a little. It wasn't a Japanese car. It was a station wagon that looked like a sports car from some foreign manufacturer. I didn't know a lot about cars, but supposedly if you purchased it from a dealer, it could easily go for over 8 million yen. The reason I knew all this was because the car's owner had told me over and over. The station wagon stopped in front of us, and there was a short bark from the horn. Associate Professor Izaki came out from the driver's side. While I was eating with Dr. Leskinen and Maho, he'd called me about something else. When I told him I was having dinner with the two of them, he'd offered to drive us home. Dr. Leskinen had tried to refuse, but Izaki had insisted so much that he had no choice but to accept. He had a pretty nice car for an associate professor. This was the cause of a lot of speculation around the college. Some people said his family was rich, and others that he had the wife of some CEO as a patron. He'd once quietly told me the truth, that he was single and spent all his money on his car, but who even knew if that was true? Izaki was acting like he was a professional chauffeur, opening the rear door and escorting Dr. Leskinen and Maho. Dr. Leskinen thanked him and got inside. Maho went around to the back to load up her luggage.
Okabe君、ちゃっかりレスキネン教授に気に入られてるなんてなかなか抜け目ないな、この。
He grinned and poked me with his
こ
elbow.
の子には手放しちゃいけないぜ。君の将来のためにね。
はあ。
He was a hard guy to hate, but for an associate professor, he seemed kind of shallow. It was one of the unfortunate things about him. He waved to me and opened the driver's side door. What was that sound? About the same time I heard the strange sound. Ooh, a hole appeared in the window on the front passenger side. Izaki screamed and fell back on his butt. Oh shit, it's getting real now. The rear window exploded. Did Dr. Leskinen just get shot? Is he gonna die? I panicked. Was this some kind of supernatural phenomenon? I was too confused to move. And then in the corner of my vision, I saw someone. A man I didn't know appeared out of the shadow of one of the pillars. I was half expecting to be Mocha. He was holding something strange in his hand. It looked kind of like a handgun. It was tiny with a short barrel and kind of flat. I couldn't see any kind of silencer. I remembered him from somewhere. I felt like we'd met before. Where? I thought, but nothing came to me immediately. The man was standing there mumbling something to himself. It doesn't look familiar to me.
もちろんつまずきが起きることは避けられないが、つまずきをもたらすものこそが忌まわしいのだ。もしお前の手か足の一つがお前をつまずかせるなら、それを切って捨てるがいい。両手両足揃っていて永遠の火に投げ入れられるよりも、それはお前にとって間違いなく幸せなのだから。また、もしお前の片方の目がお前をつまずかせるなら、それをえぐり出して捨ててしまうがいい。たとえ片目であろうとも、貧の無の谷の炎に投げ入れられるより、ずっと幸いに違いないのだ。
Valley of Hinnom, the name of a valley in eastern Israel on the south side of the old city district of Jerusalem. The valley was once where impure garbage and executed prisoners were disposed of. It was always filled with fires, black smoke, and a horrible stench. It was also where human sacrifices were offered to Molech and was so feared and avoided by the people. The sight of this valley constantly burning with unholy fires became linked in people's minds with the idea of hell. Later, Gehenna would become a symbol of hell. The Hebrew root word was Gehinnom, which became the Greek Gehenna, and later the English Gehenna. I probably pronounced all of that wrong. I apologize. This is also why the flames that burn in hell are sometimes known as the flames of Gehenna. Gehenna. However you say it. There was an aura of intensity and madness about the man as he pointed his gun at us again.
神の与えし魂とは、神の子である我々にこそ宿る。決してシリコンの上には宿らない。
Izaki stood up, turned around, and fled in terror like a startled rabbit. Oh shit. That sound again. It was so soft and light. Did he get gunned down? I couldn't even imagine that it was a gunshot. But this time the car's windows didn't break. And it didn't blow a hole in me either. It missed? Was he too focused on Izaki? But you won't be that lucky again. Move. I pushed Maho into the back seat and crawled into the driver's side. Thankfully, the engine was still running. Slammed down on the pedal without even bothering to shut the door. The sound of a powerful engine shook the underground air. The attacker flinched at the incredible noise and vibration, but the car didn't move forward. It didn't move an inch.
Shift!
Oh no, it's a manual. Dr. Leskinen and Maho were keeping their head low in the back seat and shouting loud enough to be heard over the engine. I took my foot off the accelerator. I glanced over at the gear shift. It was stuck next to the N. And then, through the windshield, I saw the attacker ready his gun again. He was aiming at me. The look in his eyes told me he was ready to kill without hesitation.
魂はシリコンの上には宿らない。
Crap. Cracks like a spider web appeared in the windshield. Something went past the side of my head. I felt a sharp pain, and at the same time a ringing in my ear, and all the other sounds faded away and started to disappear. I felt myself passing out. And then Maho jumped over the seat and slid into the passenger side. My mind was pulled back to reality. I slammed the door shut just as she told me. Maho shifted from neutral to drive and leaned over on top of me to grab the wheel. I slammed the accelerator so hard that for a moment the wheels were almost spinning in place. Then the car leapt forward. The attacker was getting closer. We were going to hit him. I was about to take my foot off the accelerator when... Oh, she's like, yeah, he tried to kill us. No mercy. Maho shouted. I gritted my teeth and did as she said. But there was no impact. Evidently, the attacker had leapt away at the last second to avoid being crushed. But there was no time to confirm it as the car raced through the parking garage. We were going too fast, and since Maho was controlling the car from the passenger seat, she couldn't keep it from going in a straight line. Oh god, don't crash in here. The car spun to the left and right, and I was almost flung out the broken window. I grabbed onto the edge of the seat as hard as I could. We headed for the exit, slamming into walls and pillars as we went. Oh, Izaki's gonna be very upset that his baby is all damaged, if he makes it out alive, that is. I could see an exit sign right in front of us. I pressed the brake and put my hand on top of Maho's, turning the wheel to the right. But that was the wrong thing to do. Oh no, the rear tires slipped. The car spun in a circle. Oh, this is intense. This escalated relatively quickly, and then it came to a stop. I looked back and saw Dr. Leskinen lying face up on the seat, giving me a thumbs up sign. I quickly put my hand on the door and got ready to get out of the driver's seat. But then I saw an old, creaky sedan rumbling towards us and shivered. It was the man from a moment ago. He was following us and moving really fast. Had it broken when we'd slammed into the wall? I grabbed Maho out of the passenger seat and rolled outside. Dr. Leskinen rolled out the rear door. It was less than a second afterward that the sedan hit. If we'd been even just a little too slow, we would have been turned into mincemeat. I stood up and offered Maho a hand, then moved away from the unrecognizable wreck that used to be a car. Oh, that's creepy as hell. Both cars were smashed together. The attacker sedan was completely embedded in the rear half of the car we'd been driving. There was no way he could have survived. There were no tire marks on the ground, which meant he'd slammed into us without braking. I shivered. I had almost been killed. I was about to pull out my smartphone when the security guards heard the commotion and came running. The security guard nodded and contacted the police. Oh, he got grazed. I could feel a pulsing ache on the side of my head. A shot from the gun had grazed me. I hadn't felt that pain at all while I was driving. I fearfully reached up to touch it and felt blood flowing from my temple down my face. I gulped when I saw my fingertips had turned bright red. Oh, geez, I almost saw Mayuri when she was shot in the head. He's gonna have, like, another... You know, he's obviously he's a lot of PTSD from everything he went through. I almost saw Kirisu when I killed her. The images felt like they were about to come flashing back to me, and I struggled to stay standing. Maho went pale. Okay, superficial temporal artery. If we can just get to the tips, let's go. An artery located at the terminal branch of the external carotid artery. It travels from the neck to the head, between the temples and ears. It supplies blood to the skin, ears, and jaw joints.
少し触るよ。
Dr. Leskinen looked at the wound. When he touched me, I felt more pain, but I gritted my teeth to endure it.
大丈夫。傷はそんなに深くない。
よかった。
これを使いなさい。
すみません。
I put the handkerchief he offered to me up to my temple.
襲ってきた人。セミナーにいた人だ。
Oh, that's where they recognized him from. Was he the one who called out, like said something like this wouldn't work, this is stupid?
本当か？
覚えてない。あなたが指を出した相手よ。
I know there's more to it than that, but just the idea that like this guy was just so heated at Rintaro yelling at him that he's like, I'm gonna kill this guy and get my revenge. I didn't even make that connection, that's right. It sounded like he was insulting Kirisu, so I shouted objection at him. Then again, I don't know if we even saw what the guy looked like. That was the guy. Was this his way of getting back at me? Not a chance.
神の与えし魂とは神の子である我々にこそ宿る。決してシリコンの上には宿らない。
何？
銃を撃つ前に言ってたんだ。
アマデウスのことかしら。
さあ。
I could faintly hear police car sirens in the distance. The hotel security guards and staff were starting to gather.
なあ、この状況どう説明したらいいんだ。
ありのまま言うしかないわ。私たちだって何が何だか。
And then Maho's eyes went wide. She, Dr. Leskinen, and the crowd were all staring at a single point. I looked too, and almost screamed, I bet Izaki got killed. Oh, no, okay, no.
与えるよがもたらすものが忌まわしい。
The man crawled out from the wreckage of the sedan, covered in blood. And then he staggered to his feet. He's either probably going to try and end us, or he's going to end himself. He looked like a zombie. All his limbs, except the one holding the gun, were pointed off in impossible directions, and I could see what looked like bones sticking out from them. His stomach was torn open, and each time he crawled forward, I could see major organs, covered in blood, falling out of the hole. Okay, I don't think he's in any position to do anything to us. But he moved towards us as if he felt no pain at all. It was such an awful sight, no one could speak. The man unsteadily... Oh, okay, every time I say something, it just immediately gets disproven. The man unsteadily aimed the gun towards Dr. Leskinen. He must have been on the verge of death because his arm was flailing around too much to aim. But Dr. Leskinen's expression was pure terror, and he seemed unable to move. Is this somebody who's against the idea of the AI and like the whole idea of them having a soul and stuff, so they're trying to shut down Amadeus? Oh! A shot rang out. Oh shit. Fresh blood flew out of the man's head, and his body was blown away as if it had been hit by a truck. He fell to the ground, still clutching his gun. He tried to crawl forward anyway, but soon twitched and stopped moving. The crowd began to scream.
Huh?
The attacker had been shot? Did he shoot himself? No, that gunshot was clearly different than the last ones. Who had just fired? I looked around. I could see several policemen coming from the entrance, but none of them had their guns drawn. And the crowd was nothing but security and hotel staff. I couldn't see any of them carrying a gun. So, who had fired? And where had they fired from? And the way they took the attacker's head off with a single shot. Not just anyone could do that.
何が起きてるんだよ。
Of course, no one told me. Damn, that was intense. Afterward, the police took us into custody. We were taken to the police station and questioned until late into the night. The sun was almost about to rise by the time we left. The police took me home in a patrol car. Dr. Leskinen and Maho were having the police take them back to their hotel in Wako, so we split up in front of the police station. We never did find out why the man had attacked us. It's got to be connected to that group of Suzuhas, right? Like the one that is after the time machine. She felt dizzy. That's strange, Suzuha thought. She stopped moving. Since she was in the middle of the sidewalk, the other pedestrians looked irritated as they moved around her. She took a deep breath and waited for a moment, but she still felt dizzy. Actually, she was finding it difficult to stand. Was she hallucinating? Or was the whole world starting to get blurry? Okay, this has got to be that thing, right? That virus. All the noise of the city around her suddenly felt very far away. It was like she was diving underwater. Was this the reading Steiner ability that Uncle Okarin had talked about? Was she starting to acquire it too? And then she realized how warm she felt. The truth hit her.
具合悪いのか私
She somehow managed to stagger back to the lab. Okay, so let's think. So who has she been in contact with? And she's been in contact with other people. So they said it's difficult to catch the virus, but... And they didn't even say how it's transmitted. It seemed she was worse off than she thought. If she could have, she would have fallen to her knees right there. During the war and afterward, when she joined up with her dad's organization, she'd been hurt badly enough to go into a coma several times. But this was the first time something like this had happened since she became a time traveler.
まずいな
She looked up to the second floor. The lights were on. She felt honestly relieved to know her dad was there. She walked up the stairs. The door was unlocked. She didn't have the energy to speak, so she tried to silently take off her shoes, and then she tripped. She fell forward.
Suzuha!
Itaru was in the room. He saw her and ran over.
大丈夫か?
She rubbed her knee and tried to stand up, but staggered again and fell into Itaru's arms. Why would she say yeah? Be like, no, there's something wrong.
どうしたん?
ごめんちょっとめまいがねすずさん体調悪いの平気ですか
When she heard those voices, Suzuha finally realized Yuki and Mairi were also in the room. She'd let her guard down, she realized. Yuki seemed unconcerned by Suzuha's obvious uneasiness. She walked over with a serious expression on her face.
すずはさんおでこを貸してください
Yuki brushed her bangs aside and put her own forehead up against Suzuha's. Suzuha's heart started pounding. She had distant memories of her mother doing this before.
ひどい熱大変だわ
Daru put his big hand up to Suzuha's cheeks as well.
本当だ.
風邪かな平気こんなのすぐに治るから
無理すんなって。今すぐ横になるべきだろ、ジョーク。
Duh. I love that there's a tip for duh. An expression used to indicate that something is obvious or self-evident. Its use can be traced back at least 200 years. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Glad I read that, actually.
そうですよそれは分かってるちょっとだけ休ませてもらうよ
Suzuha used the last of her energy to reach the sofa. She collapsed on top of it and closed her eyes. Calm down, she told herself.
マユシ濡れタオル持ってくるね橋田さん鈴葉さんの着替えは
こっち。みんなこの中に。もちろん僕中を漁って。くんかくんかとかしてないから。
God damn it. Oh, god damn it. Sniff sniff, onomatopoeia used to describe the act of smelling something, often used in manga and on the internet. A favorite phrase of perverted gentlemen. Its origins are unclear, but its use has been seen as far back as a popular comic during the early 1980s.
くだらないこと言ってると風邪のウイルスを伝染させてやるよ兄さん。
Well, at least she had the like, even when she's sick and out of it, she didn't say like dad. You know, it would be very easy for her to slip up. That would be hard to explain. Suzuha kept her eyes shut as she complained.
適当に選んで着替えさせてあげても。
頼むよ。僕じゃそういうわけにもいかないから。
はい。
As she listened to the conversation going on around her, Suzuha felt a cold towel on her forehead.
どう？悪いね、まゆ姉さん。気にしないで。
僕、ちょっと風邪薬買ってくるから、しばらくやろう。
いってらっしゃい。鈴葉さん、起きられますか？お兄さんが戻ってくる前に着替えだけ済ませてしまいましょう。
Suzuha opened her eyes. Now she has to not slip out and say, thanks, Mom. But she could just be like, oh, I'm hallucinating. You're treating me like a mom. Sorry, I don't mean anything by that. Yuki was standing over her and looking down.
いや、このままでいいよ。今までもそうしてきたし。
In fact, before Suzuha became a time traveler, there were many times where she'd been unable to rest even if she was sick. Many times she wasn't able to change clothes or even lie down. Compared to that, this was a lot nicer.
ダメです。風邪は引き始めが肝心ですよ。でもじゃありません。早く脱いで。
Yuki was a little more forceful than usual as she tried to take Suzuha's clothes off. Suzuha jumped up, surprised. Hopefully I don't have to censor anything. Steins usually, you know, it can be, sometimes they can have some questionable CGs, but nothing too bad.
汗びっしょり。まゆりちゃん、乾いたタオルはある？ああ、はい、これ。
Yuki took the towel that Mayuri had brought from the shower room and gently wiped the sweat off Suzuha's forehead and neck.
くすぐったい。少し我慢してください。子供じゃないんだから。けど、
Suzuha shook as she was rubbed with the towel. She wasn't used to being touched, and this was the first time since she was very young that anyone had done this to her.
もういい。自分でやるってば。別に遠慮しなくても。遠慮とかじゃないから。
Suzuha grabbed the towel from Yuki, trying her best to hide herself from the gaze of the other two. She took off her clothes and wiped away the sweat. Her face felt really hot. She didn't know if it was because of the fever or not, but she was finding it difficult to think straight.
これでいい？はい、よくできました。
Maybe, like, if she is infected with the virus, maybe the hallucination she'll see, like, her mom die, or she'll see, like, the future, or, like, she'll see flashes of things that she knows are going to happen. She grabbed the new pair of underwear and clothes from Yuki. Still trying to hide herself, she put them on. When she lay back down on the sofa, Yuki put a blanket on her.
まゆりちゃん、このお部屋って洗濯機はないんだっけ？いつもそれで困るんだよ。まゆし、後でコインランドリーへ行ってくるね。そんなことまでしてくれなくていいってば。こういう時はお互い様ですよ。そうだよ、すずさん。お腹は空いてます？何か食べられそうですか
？Suzuha looked at Yuki, then Mayuri, and was about to mumble another refusal, but in the end, she gave up and pulled the blanket up to her nose. She's gotta take some time for herself. She's been, like, basically, she hit the ground running, like, I got stuff to do. All this pressure on her, like, just take a break.
お腹はそんなに。でも薬を飲む前に食べておかないと。 おかゆなんかどうかな。それいいね。じゃあすぐに作りますから、ちゃんと寝ていてくださいね。うん。
ただいまだお。
Itaru came back from the drugstore a while later.
疲れた。
He was really out of breath. He must have gone running there and back. You're only exhausted because you never exercise, she thought to herself. But for some reason, the sight of her exhausted father made her happy. She quickly shook her head.
ご苦労様、ダルくん。これからおかゆ作るんだ。それを食べたら薬を飲ませてあげてください。
オッケードッキー。
Itaru walked over to Suzuha as he answered.
具合はどうなん？
よくない。
やっぱ疲れが溜まってたんだな。鈴葉が休んでるとこ見たことないし。
我ながら情けないよ。私、ここにいない方がいいかもしれない。
え？
どこかで気が緩んでたんだ。父さんがいて、まゆ姉さんがいて、ルミ姉さんがいて、いつの間にか母さんまで。そのせいで時々任務を忘れそうになる。なんだかこの温かい時間がいつまでも続くんじゃないかって錯覚しそうになったり、このまま戦争なんて起きないんじゃないかってふと考えてしまったり、普通の女の子と同じような暮らしに憧れてしまいそうになったり。
それのどこが悪いって言うん？
When Daru spoke, his face was actually serious for once, and he was looking straight into Suzuha's eyes. It was the face of the father she knew so well, the man who was always there for her.
ここを出てどこへ行くつもりなんだよ。
それはマシンの中とか。
あんなところにずっといられるわけないだろ。
でも
あんなところに娘をずっと置いておけるわけないだろう。
父さん。
For a moment, Suzuha was about to cry. She squeezed the blanket as hard as she could to stop herself. And then...
おっと、なんかマジレスしちゃったよ。
He's capable of it sometimes. Serious response net slang, the act of responding seriously to a post without joking around or posting memes.
とにかく僕は可愛い子と一緒にいられるのが嬉しくて。
He's like, I gotta get back into my perverted gentleman state or else people are gonna be suspicious.
クンカするのが楽しみなのだぜ。特に風で汗まみれになってる女の子は
Alright,
大
too far,
好
man, too
物
far.
です。
やめて。
だったら早く直すといいよ。僕にハスハスされるのが嫌だったらね。
わかったよ。
Suzuha whispered back a response, then turned away from Itaru and pulled the blanket closer.
お？もしかして今の僕の言葉でトラウマ解消しちゃった？好感度アップ？
バカなこと言ってると治ってからひどい目に遭わせるよ。
ブーツ履いてゴリゴリ踏んづけるとかそういう？
指と爪の間にいろいろ刺す。
それだけはマジで勘弁してください。すみま
Please
せ
don't.
ん。
She could smell the pleasant scent of Myri and Yuki's cooking from the kitchen.
なあ、鈴葉。そろそろ教えてくんないかな。毎日何をしに出かけてるん？
あ、
僕にも手伝えることあるかもしんないし。
後で二人きりになったら話すよ。
あ、うん。それでもいいけど。
まゆ姉さんには聞かせられない話なんだ。
え？
Yeah, there was no way she could tell Mayuri. Probably something to do with Okabe then. 3 days later. Oh, this feels like this is going to be a hallucination, maybe. Suzuha was still sick. Yuki came over every day with Mayuri to check on her. Because of this, Suzuha was able to eat nutritious food, and her fever had gone down. Now, all that was left was to get her strength back. But still, Yuki kept telling her she needed to lie down. This meant that, for better or for worse, Suzuha spent her whole day on the sofa, half asleep. Somewhere in her half-awake mind, she heard a terribly off-key tune. Since she also heard the sound of falling water, it was probably coming from the shower room.
これ何の歌だっけ？ねえ、母さん。
Suzuha had heard it when she was very young. Her mother had been singing it just like she was now. But what exactly the song was about, she just couldn't remember.
もう起きなきゃ。いつまでも寝てられない。
But even when she tried to open her eyes, they just wouldn't move. Her body must have needed more rest. Maybe Yuki was right, and she needed to lie down some more. She moaned and twisted slightly. When she did, the blanket fell to the floor. She didn't feel like she had the energy to pick it up. She could sense someone standing up from the desk where Rintaro always used the PC. Whoever they were, they came over and put the blanket back on.
マヨネーさんの匂い。
Weirdly, Mayuri always smelled good even when she wasn't using perfume. It was a slightly sweet smell like a pale white flower. It was the scent that had held her all night on that distant day in the future when she'd lost her mother. Suzuha pulled her legs inside the blanket and grabbed onto her knees like a baby in the womb. Memories went in and out of her mind as she lay there half asleep. Ah, sorry, bring back to Kagari.
痛い思いとかしたのかな。苦しい思いとかしたのかな。
She suddenly remembered what Kagari had said to her after they traveled through time. 2036, the day when she'd left, and the last second, Mayuri had looked at Suzuha and Kagari inside the time machine and smiled. It was just like the gentle smile on Suzuha's mother's face when she died protecting her daughter.
Suzuha, 起こしちゃった？うん。ちょっと前から起きてた。何か食べる？うん。
After she said yes, Suzuha snapped back to reality. She was getting weaker. When she realized that, she forced her sick body off the sofa. Her head shook, and she had to stop herself from falling forward, but she grabbed the back of the sofa and managed to stand on her own 2 feet.
ああ、ダメだよ。そんな急に起きちゃう。もう平気。迷惑かけたね、まゆ姉さん。迷惑だなんて、そんなことないよ。
Mayuri went to the kitchen and turned on the burner underneath one of the pots. The sounds and smells of bubbling stew filled the whole lab. Mayuri mixed it with a ladle and stopped every once in a while to taste it. She turned towards Suzuha and smiled.
ああ、大成功だよ。まゆ姉さんが作ったの？うん。ゆきさんのおかげで、まゆしーの腕はめきめき上達しているのです。兄さんは？メイクインに行ったよ。その後はバイトなんだって。そっか。あ、ダルくんがいないからって夜出かけようとか思ってるでしょ。ダメだよ。平気。平気じゃないよ。そういうこと言うとユキさんに叱ってもらっちゃうから。え？私がどうかしたの？
The curtain to the bathroom opened and Yuki came out. Her skin was just a little flush.
すずさんがね、寝ていてくれないのです。まあ、ダメですよ、すずはさん。あと1日、おとなしくしていること、いいですか？
Suzuha's answer was less than enthusiastic, but she gave in to Yuki's glare and sat back down on the sofa.
はい、そのまま横になって。わかったよ。
She pouted and slumped down on the sofa, then pulled the blanket on top of her. Suzuha was capable of talking back to Big Sis Mairi, but she'd never be able to talk back to Yuki.
何？すずさんってそうしてると可愛いなって思って。今の姿をダルくんに見せたらちょっと危ないかも。
That's what a thing to joke about, especially like, I mean, it would be bad if she thought that he was her brother, but it's even worse that she knows that he's her dad.
そうだね。時々本当に兄弟なのかなって思うことあるし。気持ち悪いこと言うな。あれれ、すずはさん、もしかして照れてます？
Oh no, does Yuki think that maybe Suzuha is secretly Daru's girlfriend? Because he likes a younger sister type who talks back, and that's Suzuha.
照れてなんかいない。本当に？当たり前だろ。なんで私が。と言いつつ照れてるすずさんってやっぱり可愛いね。萌えだね、萌え。うるさいな。
Suzuha couldn't say anything, so she just had to turn away.
さてと、まゆしはそろそろアルバイトに行かなきゃ。シチューは食べていかないの？アルバイトの帰りにもう一回ここに寄るつもりなんだ。その時に食べようかと思って。じゃあサラダか何か作っておいてあげる。一緒に食べて。ありがとうゆきさん。楽しみにしてるね。
Mayuri told Suzu one more time she needed to keep lying down, then left for maid Queen Yan. Yuki went to the kitchen and added a few seasonings to the stew Mayuri made, then turned off the burner.
あ、そうだ、すずはさん、汗かいてるでしょ。食事の前に体拭いておきましょうか。いいって言ってるじゃないか。
Yuki wanted to do stuff like that every day, and each time Suzuha frantically refused.
シャワーは無理でもちゃんときれいにしておかなくちゃ。昨日も一昨日もやったんだからいいって。1週間や2週間くらい放っておいても死ぬわけじゃないし。1週間ってそんなのダメですダメです。
Yuki hurried into the shower room.
あのさ、自分でできるから。そういうこと言う人に限っていつまでもやらないんですよね。そんなことダメです。
Yuki came back with a bowl filled with hot water and a towel. She could be stubborn when she got this way. Suzuha had learned that well over the past 3 days. Yuki was just like the mother she remembered. She slowly and uneasily stood up, and then she took off her top, trying her best not to let Yuki see her skin.
女の子同士なんだからそんなに恥ずかし
This
が
is
ら
just
なく
such
て
a thing
も。
about, like, this is, like, she doesn't know it. For all she knows, it's just two girls about the same age just hanging out, wiping the other person's sweat down, but just knowing it's like, that's her future mom. It's, I don't know, it just adds, like, another
別に
strange level to it.
背中だけ私が拭いてあげますね。いい、子供じゃないんだからできる。でもちゃんと拭けないと思うし。いいってば。
Yuki seemed a little shocked, but she quickly handed over the hot, wet towel.
ごめんなさい。触られるのが嫌な人もいますよね。私こそ悪かった。大きな声出したりして。お湯 テーブルの上に置いておきますから。夕飯の支度しちゃいます。
Yuki walked off, dejected. Once Suzuha saw that she was focused on finishing the cooking, she slid behind the curtains in the back part of the room. She used the towel and wash bowl to wipe herself down. She couldn't let Yuki see her body. There were scars. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I thought it was the thing where it's like she just didn't want to have her mom take care of her because it was going to bring up feelings and it was going to be hard for her to continue her mission. But there were scars, both old and new, all over her, and burn marks that might never heal. To her, these wounds were like medals from the vicious battles she'd survived, and she didn't care who saw them. But she didn't want to let the mother who'd given birth to her, or rather would give birth to her, to see them. Especially not the dozens of pale white marks around her breasts.
母さん。
She still remembered that nightmarish day. The bullets which had killed her mom had lost their power as they passed through her organs, but still managed to dig into Suzuha's skin. And when they did, they were covered in her mother's blood and flesh. The scars would probably never heal completely. To Suzuha, they were her mother's grave. She shook her head to try and get the nightmare out of her mind. She took her bottoms off too and wiped herself clean all the way down to her toes. Then she put on a new pair of underwear. It was only after she finished putting on her newly cleaned clothes that she felt human again. Jeez, I went from like I thought it was going to be like there was going to be like a CG with Yuki washing her to like, oh, it got really depressing actually. When she came back, Yuki was putting bowls filled with stew and salad onto the table. Their eyes met and an awkward silence filled the room.
できました。
Yuki broke the silence first.
ありがとう。どのくらい食べますか？いや、いいよ。それくらいは私がやる。
Suzuha put just enough stew and salad for her meal onto her own plate, then made a plate for Yuki as well.
すみません。いや、こっちこそ食事の用意なんてさせて悪い。具合が悪い時はお互い様と言ったはずですよ。食べ終わったらちゃんと薬も飲んでくださいね。
The two sat on the sofa and filled their mouths with stew and salad. The stew had a mild, gentle flavor. It felt like something Mayuri would make.
ずいぶん上達したでしょ、まゆりちゃん。缶詰をただ温めただけとかそういうわけじゃないんですよ。大したもんだね。鈴葉さんもやってみません？
I don't know what it is, the look on Yuki right now is creeping me out. It's looking like she's kind of looking at Suzuha, but she's looking right at me and her eyes just look... She looks like a robot.
私はいいよ。柄じゃないし。そんなことないと思いますけど。まあ、いつかね。いつかっていう人は結局最後までやらないんですよ。それ、さっきも似たようなこと言ってた。そうでしたっけ？
And then the conversation ceased for a time. Suzuha slurped down her stew. She had terrible manners, and tried to come up with something to talk about. This time, it was Suzuha's turn to break the silence. After what she just remembered, she couldn't bear to be silent around Yuki.
さっきの歌だけどさ、あれ、なんだっけ？歌？シャワールームで、ほら。もしかして歌ってました？私、恥ずかしい。下手なのに歌うの好きだからつい口ずさんじゃうんですよね。別にうまい下手なんて気にしなくていいと思うけど、何の歌だったか思い出せなくてさ。実は私もなんですよ。印象的なところだけ覚えてるというか、子供の頃に流行った教育番組の歌か何かだとは思うんですけど。 役に立てなくてすみません。鈴葉さんはいつ頃あの歌を？私も子供の時かな。その母さんがよく
Oh,
歌
she
ってくれ
is.
た
Ooh,
よ。
she's toeing the edge there.
優しそうな人ですもんね、鈴葉さんのお母さん。うん。
The conversation flowed so naturally that she didn't think about how she responded.
え？
A second later, she realized what she'd said, and then she stared at her mother.
どうしました？私の母さん。どういうこと？どういうことって、おとといお見かけしまして。
Whoa, what?
ですから、おとといここを訪ねていらしたんです。
Wait a minute.
そんなバカな。
Wait, is that Kagari, maybe? Huh. Because I'm trying to think, Kagari, if she was somehow left back in 1976, and it's 2010, I mean, she'd be a little bit old to be Suzuha's mother, right? Well, maybe, because she was like, the kid was, she looked maybe to be about 8 or 10. I mean, a little bit on the older side to be, assuming that Suzuha's in like her early 20s, maybe that would work.
お母さんが来たらおかしいんですか？
Or is that someone from that, ooh, I wonder if it's somebody from that group that Suzuha saw that is after the time machine that came by and said like, oh, I'm her mom, is Suzuha here?
だって。
There was no way she could say that her mother was right in front of her. Confused, she fell silent. Yuki, for her part, must have come to some conclusion about the reason for Suzuha's reaction. She started to stammer and fidget.
ごめんなさい。私何も知らなくて、もしかしてお母さんとの間に何か？
Ask her what she looked like. What did she look like?
いや、喧嘩をして家出してるとか？そういうわけじゃ。今にして思えばなんか変ですよね。お母さんたら橋田さんには着替えや差し入れを持ってきていたのに、鈴葉さんには
So I'm
何
thinking
も。
it's either Kagari grown up or maybe just checking in to see if she's alive, but she can't like interact with her because that could mess up the timeline. Or it's just someone checking to see if Suzuha's here to confirm like that she time traveled. I don't know.
兄さんに着替え？差し入れ？
What did Daru say about that too? Because like if they're siblings, right? She'd be like, is that your mom too?
はい。
Suzuha thought as hard as she could and finally reached an answer.
そうか。
Yuki was talking about Itaro Hashida's mother. In other words, Suzuha's grandmother, who she'd never seen except in pictures. Ah, okay. But since she told Yuki she was Itaru's brother, it was natural that she'd make the wrong assumption. Could be that, but it could be something else. I'll have to ask Daru about that.
どうしました？なんでもない。
If Itaru had said even a word to her about it, this wouldn't have happened. How stupid. She'd have to give him a lecture later. While Suzuha was thinking about the talking to her dad was going to get, Yuki had already started to sympathize with her imagined plight.
鈴葉さん、私いつでも相談に乗りますからね。何でも話してくださいね。
For some reason, her eyes were starting to well up.
ありがとう。
Suzuha didn't know how to react to this, but she felt a little embarrassed.
やっぱり優しいんだな、母さんは。
Just like she'd told Itaru, this place was too comfortable. She was starting to imagine that this life would continue forever. But sending this brief, happy time beyond the horizon of the worldline was supposed to be Suzuha's mission. If she didn't, this world would be destroyed. Alright, so that is going to do it for this episode. A pretty action-packed episode, actually. We had kind of our first big choice with this one. About, like, the decision whether or not to hang up the phone. So that is going to be the cross point about where the story is going to go. I don't know how. I just knew that I needed to like make that decision, and that's going to affect the story. But more importantly, we have somebody who seems to be after Dr. Leskinen about his research. Someone who was at the original the lecture way back at the beginning that Rintaro yelled at, and he seemed to be almost possessed. Now, whether he's working for that same group that saw Suzuha with the time machine, I'm not too sure. This could be somebody completely different, but yeah, he was saying stuff like biblical quotes or things like that, trying to kill them. All this weird stuff, so I don't know what that's all about. But now we have like an antagonist, so somebody who, once again, similar to the Rounders, seems to be after Dr. Leskinen, and like, does this also coincide with what happened with Kirisu's mother's place, where like they burned down the house, and it seemed like maybe research of Kirisu's, were they trying to destroy it? Were they trying to steal it? What's going on there? Like, is there some espionage going on? Because they said something about, like, you know, the Russians, like people speaking Russian, burning down the house. They seem like professionals. I'm sure this is all connected somehow. How? I'm not sure yet, but I'm excited to find out. This was a really cool episode. I hope you guys liked it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Emily Hornsby, Zoran Ether, Revealing Storm, Asborn Kennedy, Icognito, Harry Gazif, and Jared Fan.